All right, folks, welcome back again to episode 2 of this awesome limited series with professional LA-based cinematographer Jon Schweigart. We're going to dive right back into it right now. This is episode 2 where he shares all of his tips and tricks and shot designs, how he exposes for shooting day exterior scenes. So let's get into it.
Here's an example of, like I mentioned before, shooting into the sun. It gives her that hair light. This is a music video for Susie Corey. This is like a prime example of using the sun as your backlight. So on the right side of frame, we had just a 2x4 Silver Surfer. So that means that one side is like a silver reflector and one side is white. So this was the white side. And the Volkswagen bus is doing a lot of the job too. It's providing bounce back up into her. And the lighting is not blinding her. She's not squinting. And it just gives kind of like a glamour look outside for free.
And where is the sun at in this photo?
The sun is, if we're looking at a clock, it's probably around like 10 or 11 o'clock.
Got you. Okay.
Above her.
Okay, so that's like over here somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. And then your Silver Surfer you said was over here?
Yeah, about 45 degrees. It's close to not being in frame as possible.
Okay.
Right here, here's an example of just using the sun naturally, and it's coming in at like a side angle. Yeah, like I mentioned, if you're gonna have the sun just beam down directly in somebody's face, it's probably not gonna be flattering unless that's what you're going for, is like some like high-end, commercial print work where you want it to be a nice bright light on them. But in this case, she's moving around, she's looking a couple different directions, she was turning her head. So she's positioned so that the sun comes in at an angle where it gives the most kind of contour on her face and her body. So you're seeing the shadow on her leg, you're seeing the highlight on her leg, and the same with her face.
So where's the sun at in this photo? Here?
Yeah, it's 9, 10 o'clock.
Okay.
If you're looking at a clock there.
Okay.
And that's just, natural sunlight.
And there's no
right there.
modifiers you're using in it?
Nope, we're super wide.
Okay.
If I was to go in close, I would check out where the shadows are, because if you're so wide, like you really can't see anything too unflattering.
Right.
Big movie production, you could modify this if you had
Diffusion.
It's called a fly swatter.
Okay.
You could throw up a 20 by or a 40 by, but look at the parking lot. You would see the shadow on the ground in this shot.
Sure.
So a lot of times you'll just, in the wide, you'll just let it go natural. And you'll scout, or you'll know where the sun is going to be, and you're going to know that the sun is going to work for you.
Gotcha. So you would always want the sun to be this way, preferably. Or like you said, a little back.
Yes. To give the most shape on a human face, I believe you want the sun to be either coming from the side, from the back, or 3/4 from the front. If you're going 3/4 from the front, it can give you what's called a Rembrandt, which, is probably the most flattering when it comes to frontal, like hard light, because if you position the face, what you're going to get is the nose shadow is going to connect to the shadow side. So the shadow side of the face is this side right here. And the nose shadow is going to connect to that shadow side of the face and create a little triangle here. And it was used in like Dutch paintings.
Right.
It's just a flattering way and a dramatic way to light the face so that there's contrast there.
Because there's no modifiers being used here, this is like a great time to use false color, I would imagine, or no? Or you're just strictly going off of where the sun is?
I would say basically every time you power the camera on, you're going to check your false color and see what you're at.
Nothing's clipping, or?
So this was 4 stops of ND,
okay.
ISO 800 on the Blackmagic Ursa Mini. And
do you remember what your white, did you already say white balance?
White balance is probably here, just straight up 5600, just daylight mode on the Ursa Mini. And yeah, the sun's coming in.
The dynamic range is killer.
Yeah, sky's coming out through color grading. The saturation is boosted, obviously. Yeah, there's no real clipping going on anywhere. If you look at the white on the roof of the van, that's probably in the yellow, but it's white, so it's not a big deal.
It's okay.
Because it's already white.
Right.
So, and there's no detail
as
really
long,
there to look at
as long as
anyway.
the whites aren't red, we're safe, right?
Yeah, like if the clouds in the right of frame above the mountains there, if that was like going into the red and the white, that I might have an issue with because
Gotcha.
you're losing detail in the
Right.
clouds. But
Right. Now, what
overall,
if,
you're looking at a white thing. Why not make it white in your image?
Gotcha.
Like,
So let me try to get into your head on the day of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're here. You've already lined up the sun. You said 9, 10 o'clock. And now we turn on false color. And so what if these clouds were yellow on the false color?
I think they were close to yellow. There might be a little bit yellow here and there. With that dynamic range, you're still getting detail there. But for yellow, you're not exactly clipping yet. This is a still from a music video I did for Plastic Tiara from RuPaul's Drag Race.
Oh, okay, sweet.
Yeah, if you look at it, it's another case of shooting into the sun as our backlight and her hair light. Yeah, if you look at the shadows on the floor, we're seeing that the sun is basically right behind her.
It's what, right up here? Or what? Or like up here?
It's like
up
at
here.
12 o'clock, right
okay.
above her head.
Okay, so that's all
pretty
sun.
centered. Yeah,
That's all
we're
sun.
shooting it. Yeah, pretty centered here.
Okay.
Might be a little bit off, but yeah, basically, pretty dead on. And this is a case of location scouting. We were there around 2 o'clock, and I saw where the sun was. I'm like, between this time window, we're going to be great here to shoot because the sun is directly arcing there for exactly where we want it. And you know, you got to really stay on schedule throughout the day to make sure that you're getting what you want, or you might have to bring a little bit more gear to fix, you know, running behind because the sun might be wrapping around a little bit too much. Like if you see some of the dancers in the back, the sun is kind of hitting them on the forehead, which I just was okay with because she has a little bit bigger hair, so it wasn't hitting her face at all in an unflattering way. But if she were to tip her head back, it would. But yes, for lighting this was a 6x Ultra Bounce on the right, and we just used as many bounces as we could. I brought out my 2x4 Silver Surfer, and we had a 4x4 beadboard, and they were pretty much lined up right with the Ultra Bounce just to give as much bounce back as we could to make her skin glow and as bright as we could. There is a diffusion filter on here as well, so the highlight.
One do you use? Like which
This would be a Tiffen digital diffusion screw-on filter.
Okay.
And there's a star filter on there as well. In this case, you're not getting the star filter just because of the angle, but when she turns, you'll see like the rhinestones catch the light, and there's a little star pattern. We'll see it in the next photo. So it's the 6x is doing the bulk of the work here. The white floor, the checkerboard floor is giving a little bit of return, but the 6x Ultra Bounce on the right is really doing the work, and then we had a 4x beadboard giving a little bit extra. We're just making that frame larger, essentially in a quick way, because we jumped on monitor and we're like, it looks great. Can we just get a little bit more? We walked that frame up as close as we could, right at the edge of the frame. I was on the movie here, so there was times when I would come back and I would clip a little bit of the frame. Mm-hmm. We just cut that out of the edit, but it was as tight as we could possibly get it there.
Let's do a quick breakdown of these things, because I'm not sure that I entirely know what an Ultra Bounce is. What is that?
Kind of plasticky. It's not quite cloth. One side is black. It's kind of like a nylon fabric. Okay. So one side is white, and it's really reflective because it's like kind of like a nylon fabric, and the other side is black.
Interesting.
Nylon as well. So you could use it as negative fill on one side, and then the other side you can use as your bounce. Yeah.
So how could one make like a DIY version of this Ultra Bounce? Could you? What could you do? Like let's say like you see a little bit of rags I have here. Like what could I, you know, because like I have muslin, I have like full grid, I have like some shit, you know.
Yeah.
Like could I make an Ultra Bounce? I mean, I'm just curious.
Well, Ultra Bounce is not see-through at all.
Oh, so it's like straight on.
Any kind of like DIY cloth that you get, you're most likely gonna see through it a little bit.
Yeah.
Even like a thick shower curtain or something like that.
What about in some of those 5-in-1s? They have like a white side. Would that work potentially, or?
Yeah, in the 5-in-1s they actually have an Ultra Bounce.
That's what the white side is.
Mm-hmm, the white side is it's totally opaque.
Okay. So that's what we need.
No light's gonna get through it.
Gotcha.
That's pretty similar to the UltraBounce fabric.
Okay. So we could potentially use
But if
something
you
like
used a
that.
full silk, it's going to give you a bounce. You know, it's just not as reflective.
Not as reflective. And then on top of that, then you have your silver, that's the beadboard.
Yep. So that was just dialed in specifically on her.
That was hers.
A little bit of silver.
Okay.
You know, just to brighten her up a tad.
Okay.
It probably wasn't full on because then it would have been like really shiny and blinding her.
Okay, I got you.
So, term I use for that is wasting it. If it's fully on, you can say waste a little bit of that bounce, and it just means angling it off, like
Get it off of her.
Yeah, waste some of that return off of
Gotcha.
her.
Okay.
The 4x beadboard was directly angled on. Yeah, a lot of my grips, they'll use a 2x4 Silver Surfer because it's so reflective. You can see the angle.
Right.
So they'll use that to set the angle, and then they'll bring in the UltraBounce, and then they'll know like the true angle that is going to bounce the most.
Okay.
The only other way to do that is to really stare at it.
Okay.
From where the talent is standing.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
You can do that.
What
but
about this? What's the beadboard doing then? Is that just overall?
It's just making the UltraBounce larger. It was just
Oh.
added in for speed.
Oh, okay.
We just brought it in real quick.
That's the white side of the beadboard.
So we're kind of getting a 4x6 out of it.
Got you.
Minus the 2 feet.
So that's
on
just
top.
extra.
You're just making it a little bit larger source.
Got you. And then over here, no blacks or nothing, just.
Nope, because we're doing a single source kind of lighting
Gotcha.
setup. So
Gotcha.
she's kind of filled from her key side.
From here, right? The sun back here. Gotcha.
And any kind of shadow on her face is filled in from the floor.
Got you. Because we got all this nice checker pattern.
Yep. So that's the setup that we just kind of found, to work, in a fast-paced kind of setup. We could have used a 12x, but we had the 6x built because that's what I requested. So when I looked at the monitor, I'm like, can we add a little bit more? So we just flew in the additional stuff just to sweeten it up a little bit.
Gotcha.
But we could have had a 12x setup, but 6x is a lot easier to set up than a 12x.
Gotcha.
It takes less, dirt to throw on it, a little less safetying.
Gotcha.
But we could have used a 12x UltraBounce and got a pretty similar result here. It just depends on, the logistics of what you're working with and how fast you can move. Because speed is everything. Shooting a music video in one day.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Let's look at the next slide there. So this is the same video, right?
Yep. This was the last shot of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is magic hour, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
The sun is in the top left corner there.
This is it, right?
Yeah.
That's the sun. That's literally the sun right there, right? Where the spectral
It's a
highlight is?
little bit more to the left. It's not exactly in frame.
Oh, okay.
But it's
These are just
probably
highlights.
about, if you're looking at this, it's probably 3 feet to the left, a little bit more.
Just over here somewhere.
Just on the horizon, about to set.
Okay.
That flare is coming from, I have this like rainbow streak filter.
Okay. Cool.
It adds some funky
like
rainbowness to it.
It's like
but
an anamorphic kind of thing? Or?
yeah, if you look at on the left side, especially in the water,
Those
you're
streaks.
getting some weird kind of chromatic
Aberration.
banding things.
Yeah.
Like you see a little bit of green, then orange, and then another green.
That's from the
It's kind of a
streaks.
streaky thing.
How did you get rid of it when it was on her?
Because she's not a source of light.
Oh, so it only does that with sources.
Yeah, on like a nice hot highlight, it'll become apparent.
Gotcha.
It was all over her crown. In other
Yeah.
shots, her crown would catch the light, and we'd see it there. But that streak is coming from the sun.
That's cool.
So it's supplying a hair light on her as
Big
well.
time, yeah.
But she is keyed with a 1.2 HMI.
Okay.
Pretty
That's
much
coming-
dead on, nothing on it.
Okay.
We were just, doing this fast. And we just sweetened it up with a 1.2 HMI just to give her a little bit. And she was looking right at the light. So kind of like what I mentioned before, if the model or the actor is looking towards the source, you can hide the nose shadow because
Gotcha.
it's nice and packed right in there.
Gotcha.
Or if she was to turn and face the camera, you'd get length and nose shadow on her
Yeah.
cheek. But for setting it up and blocking it in a certain way, a hard directional light, can make her look beautiful and give you the exposure and the glow that you want. Yeah.
What's really cool too is seeing how awesome the sun is making her pop. Like the sun is like a huge backlight. It's just making her pop.
Yeah. I did lie. We had CTS on that. That is not just a raw HMI.
Oh, okay.
So the CTS
straw, right?
spread it a tiny bit. Yeah. So we had half straw, I believe. So that's where the warmth is coming from.
Got you.
Because the pool is like very cool because it's in the shadow. Yeah. And the sun was dipping, so it was kind of only hitting her back. You can see behind her the sun's not hitting at all. Yeah. So it's getting a little bit more cool in the shadows. So that warmth was brought out by the HMI and the CTS gel that we threw on there.
Was there any other modifiers used here, or just the HMI?
That's just the HMI. Yep.
Okay.
If we would have not had the 1.2, it still was going to work. But you always kind of want to bring life. If you can see in her eyes, she's got that eye light in there. Yeah. Her skin, like the cheekbones, are accentuated. It was just the gaffer doing his thing while I was already suited up in the movie. I'm like, can we get something coming from the right side? Because that's where she's facing. And generally, you're going to put the light in the direction that they're looking, because that's where you're going to get the most contour on their face. So he, instead of using the bounce, which he could have done, but the sun was moving, so he's like, I'm going to set the HMI up and they can shoot for much longer. He had it, and he was already working on it before I even asked him. So it's just a proactive gaffer.
A good guy, yeah. And I also want to point out for the audience that you're shooting shadow side. You're shooting it.
Yeah, I'd say always shoot shadow side when you can.
Right.
There's times when, certain DPs will kind of face the actor away from the light and kind of key from the other side, but I think that's maybe a blocking problem that they're facing, so they do it. Or
they just don't
Conrad Hall, I believe, chose to do it a lot on American Beauty for making alienation, between the actors.
Oh, okay. He would shoot into the key side, you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he would still have shadow on the other side, but camera would be
on
the key side.
Interesting. And you said you think his process was because to alienate
I read that, yeah.
Okay.
That he wanted kind of alienation between the two actors.
That's great. Cool. So what are we looking at here?
Oh, we're looking at a Western shot, anamorphic.
Nice.
Yeah, just going with the dead center framing. Shooting in, golden hour. This was shot over the course of 2 different days because it was probably 6 pages. Okay. And to get lighting to match, it's just really difficult to get all that coverage out. So we planned it that way to shoot it over 2 different nights, and luckily we lucked out with the weather. But yeah, he is simply facing towards a silver gold checkerboard lame rag.
What side is that on? This side? This is an actor
right
here, right?
side of frame. Yeah, that's an actor's shoulder.
So where's the board then? Is it on this side of the actor? That side?
It's on the right side of the actor.
So way more this way. Okay. And it's shooting. Oh, that's what's doing this. That's the board? Okay.
Yeah. And it's coming from frame right.
Cool.
And that was a 6x as well.
You said silver or white?
It was silver gold.
Oh, it was both.
It was a checkerboard, yeah.
Oh, okay. Where does one get one of those? You can't DIY something like that.
No, you can if you use a reflector. I do own one. It's a 5-in-1 42-inch reflector.
They have a checkerboard?
It's a zigzag pattern, but it's the same kind of effect.
Oh, badass.
You could do that. I chose silver and gold because I wanted the heat of the desert.
Got you.
And I wanted him to look a little bit warmer, sunburnt a little bit.
It gives you a little bit of both worlds.
Yeah, it's not overly saturated, even though with the color grade it is very warm. But straight out of the camera, it's not overly saturated gold, so it'll match the ambient bounce that's hitting him. Gotcha. As opposed to just straight up gold coming from one side. Gotcha. You might notice his shadow side being cooler. So
this is all sun here, right?
Yeah, he's backlit with the sun there.
Okay.
And that's just blocking me picking the background that I think is going to work to have them both backlit in the master shot, and then a little bit of tweaking. You can get the actor to stay kind of backlit, and with a hat, it really helps. So the sun is it's maybe at 1 o'clock, if you're looking at a clock hand. Look at his right shoulder. It's definitely being hit.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it looks pretty dead centered behind him as a
I see.
backlight.
Okay,
It's pretty close, but I would say
it's up over here somewhere.
Yeah, I would say it's about favoring his right shoulder.
Okay.
If you look at his hat, you'll see the highlight
Right here
on the top of the hat.
Shit, right there.
Yeah, as opposed to the left side is dark.
Black. I see.
And
okay.
his left shoulder is getting some light a little bit more. But it's basically behind him.
So this is what I think I've heard referred to as a sun wrap, because you have the board on the same side as the sun.
Yeah. It wasn't really designed to be like it was like a 3/4 backlight from the sun hitting him, and then we kind of keyed from the same side. It wasn't really designed that way, but it's working.
Okay.
So I won't deny that, but
well, is that bad or good? I mean, how do you feel about like sun wrap ideas, or is that something you like to do or no?
Yes, I mean, you're gonna want to show like single source lighting, right?
Right.
So if the sun is kind of more, in this frame to the right, that's kind of where the key should be coming from. You can do the opposite too, but that looks a little bit more artificial.
Because then there's two suns.
Right. Well, it could work in like an interior daylight scene or something,
Just
or a nighttime
lights.
scene.
Okay.
Where you could have like his edge light being, on his fill side.
Got you.
But
so
in this case, it's more from the same side as the key.
So that's a good point to point out for our viewers, is that when you're outdoors, you gotta constantly think about there's only one light source outside, right?
You have to keep that in mind, but there's no rule saying that you can't flip around and backlight the other person as well.
Sure.
I think Bob Richardson, Tarantino's DP, does it a lot.
And it does. No one fucking calls him out.
No, I actually think if it makes your images look better, who cares?
Right.
I've done it. I believe I didn't do it here though in this scene. I kept it a little bit more neutral because I'm not going for a stylized fantasy thing.
So you're talking about
more
when
gritty.
You do the turnaround?
Yeah. So the other actor, when I turned around, I didn't have him backlit.
Gotcha.
Because in this case, he would have had too similar of a background anyway.
Right.
But I was just keeping more of the realism in the scene.
Exactly.
But I have done that where you try to keep everyone backlit and you cheat the background.
Yeah.
Why not? You can get away with it. Do it. If you look at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when Brad Pitt visits the Manson ranch, that was supposed to be all like golden hour over the course of one afternoon, but I think they shot that over multiple days as well.
Okay.
Almost everything is backlit in that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, how do they do it? They block it that way.
Interesting.
And cheat backgrounds.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You said you shot this on Anamorphic. Tell me a little bit about that setup.
They were the Lomo square front
the Russians.
Anamorphics, yeah.
Okay. You have those?
Super funky. Those? No, I wish. They probably run about 2 times more than my car was worth.
Okay.
So that was a rental. They were Oct 19 mount, which is like this old 35 millimeter Russian mount. So we shot this on the Red Dragon, and
they make an adapter for
we
it?
swapped the mount out to an Oct 9. They made one for the Red.
Oh shit.
Okay. Yeah, and they're square front. They have a little bit more, I think, distortion than a lot of other anamorphics do, especially on the wider side. They do this thing called mumps. I don't know who came up with that term, but it generally makes you look really skinny or really fat, depending on what side of the frame you're on. So like mumps, was an illness that you got back in like the 1900s or 1800s, and it just made your face fat and bloated.
Okay.
So the anamorphic distortion would make you look like you have mumps, I guess.
Interesting. And that's what these Lomos did?
At certain focal lengths and certain sides of the frame, you would get a different squeeze factor. So that's why I was creating that, because it's a 2 times squeeze. So when you unsqueeze it, certain parts, just like a spherical lens, you'll notice like on a wider lens, you'll get like really weird angled lines on the edges of a wide lens,
Right.
With these anamorphics, you get, barrel distortion. Not so much on these, but I would get different stretch factors throughout the frame. So on my wide, I'm gonna have to look up the focal length of it, but I feel like it was a 35. Center was super skinny, and the edges were a little bit extra wide. So,
okay.
Always, fun experience working with anamorphics, especially vintage ones.
Yeah.
You're never gonna know kind of what character you're gonna get, but yeah, these were.
They look great.
They flared beautifully. That's kind of what they're known for, is their purple streak, and their bokeh is really nice.
Cool. So this is the same film.
Same film. Later on in the afternoon here, sun is changing colors to a little bit more, peachy orange. This is an example of using a hard light to key your actor, but it's due to the blocking. His face is turned towards the light. He's facing upstage, shooting from the shadow side. It's contouring his face in an attractive, flattering way that fits the mood of the story. So this is an example of when you can, use hard lighting, and not have to diffuse it in an outdoor environment.
Got you. Are you putting any neg on this camera side or no?
No, simply because that was just, sunlight cooking down on him.
Gotcha.
Probably an F32 there.
Okay.
But we're ND'd, so we're probably at like a 4 on those anamorphics right there.
Oh shit.
Yeah, anamorphics you don't want to shoot wide open, so
yeah.
4 to 5.6 is actually pretty good because the depth of field is actually a little shallower.
Yeah.
Compared to spherical.
Sweet, and that it's just one.
It's a kind of an illusion, but
okay.
It feels like it's a little bit more shallow.
And that's it. There's nothing on his other side there, or nothing. Just the sun, huh?
Yeah, we're just stopped down a little bit with the ND. We're just cutting the light so that his face isn't, blowing out. And
so
I think it's just his hat, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if you look at his shoulder, it's catching the light, but
for sure,
his hat's kind of blocking out.
For sure.
It's doing that negative on him.
So it seems like the biggest takeaway here is kind of what you talked about in the intro is, it's all about doing that location scout and figuring out you got to work around the sun.
Yeah, you really have to plan your shot and your shot order. So
if you're running gunning, you're kind of screwed right out the gate.
You can't jump around too much when you're working with a dropping sun. You really kind of have to shoot essentially as best you can chronologically, because it's gonna, you're gonna lose it. You're gonna have matching issues.
Right.
So you really got to have everything kind of planned out and move as fast as you can. But if you can afford it, you can shoot golden hour over the course of 2-3 days if you want to.
Right.
If you're shooting a 15-minute short out there, I don't see why you wouldn't shoot it over 3 days. Multiple cameras, you could try it, but yeah, this was a single camera project.
Got you. All right, guys, this is turning into quite the treasure chest to unpack here, but there's just a wealth of knowledge to be obtained from Jon, and I just hope you guys are into it. It looks like it's going to be a couple more episodes than I anticipated because there is so much raw footage that I got while having this little discussion with Jon. I just hope you guys are finding it as beneficial as I am. From the comments in the last video, I can tell that a lot of you are into it. So yeah, man, the journey continues. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the bell so you'll be notified as soon as the next episode with Jon pops up. And yeah, we'll just roll right into the next episode, shooting day exteriors. In the next one, he gets more into how he exposed for shooting on film, for the music video that he shot out in Nevada, for Lauren Rocket on 16mm film. So yeah, and we haven't even got into the car scene yet where he shot day exterior for the feature film. So yeah, it's a lot to unpack here. So stick around, and for now, that is a wrap.